Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another Poetry Thursday video, and of course this is part 3 of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We'll get right into it. Before the first daylight, the folk uprose. The guests that were to go for their grooms they called, and they hurried up in haste horses to saddle, to stow all their stuff and strap up their bags. The men of rank arrayed them for riding got ready. To saddle leaped swiftly, seized then their bridles, and went off on their ways where their wish was to go. The liege lord of the land was not last of them all, to be ready to ride with a rout of his men. He ate a hurried mouthful after the hearing of mass, and with horn to the hunting field he hastened at once. When daylight was opened yet dimly on earth, he and his huntsmen were up on their high horses. Then the leaders of the hounds leashed them in couples, unclosed the kennel door and cried to them, "Out!" and blew boldly on bugles 3 blasts full long. Beagles bayed thereat, and brave noise making, and they whipped and wheeled in those that wandered on a scent. 100 hunting dogs I have heard of the best were they. To their stations keepers passed, the leashes were cast away, and many a rousing blast woke din in the woods that day. At the first burst of the baying all beasts trembled. Deer dashed through the dale by dread bewildered, and hastened to the heights, but they hotly were greeted, and turned back by the beaters, who boldly shouted. They let the harts go past with their high antlers, and the brave bucks also with their branching palms. For the lord of the castle had decreed in the close season that no man should molest the male of the deer. The hinds were held back with hay and where? The does driven with great din to the deep valleys. There could be seen let slip a sleet of arrows. At each turn under the trees went a twanging shaft, that into brown hides bit hard with barbed head. Lo, they brayed, and they bled, and on the banks they died. And ever the hounds in haste hotly pursued them, and hunters with high horns hurried behind them, with such a clamor and cry as if cliffs had been riven. If any beast broke away from bowmen their shooting, it was snatched down and slain at the receiving station, when they had been harried from the height and hustled to the waters. The men were so wise in their craft at the watchers below, and the greyhounds were so great that they got them at once, and flung them down in a flash as fast as men could see with sight. The lord, then wild for joy, did oft spur and oft alight, and thus in bliss employ that day till dark of night. Thus in his game the lord goes under greenwood eaves, and Gawain the bold lies in goodly bed, lazing till the walls are lit by the light of day, under costly coverlet with curtains about him. As in slumbers he strayed, he heard stealthily come a soft sound at his door as it secretly opened, and from under the clothes he craned then his head, a corner of the curtain he caught up a little, and looked that way warily to learn what it was. It was the lady herself, most lovely to see, that cautiously closed the door quietly behind her, and drew near to his bed. Then abashed was the knight, and lay down swiftly to look as if he slept. And she stepped silently and stole to his bed, cast back the curtains, and crept then within, and sat her down softly on the side of the bed, and there lingered very long to look for his waking. He lay there lurking a long while and wondered, and mused in his mind how the matter would go, to what point it might pass, to some surprise he fancied. Yet said to himself, more seemly 'twould be in due course with question to inquire what she wishes. Then roused he rolled over, and round to her turning, he lifted his eyelids with a look as of wonder, and signed him with the cross, thus safer to be kept aright. With chin and cheeks so sweet, of blended red and white, with grace then him did greet, small lips with laughter bright. "Good morning, Sir Gawain," said the gracious lady. "You are a careless sleeper if one can creep on you so. Now quickly you are caught. If we come not to terms, I shall bind you in your bed, you may be assured." With laughter the lady thus lightly jested. "Good morning, your grace," said Gawain gaily. "You shall work on me your will, and well I am pleased. For I submit immediately, and for mercy I cry, and that is best, as I deem, for I am obliged to do so." Thus he jested in return with much gentle laughter. "But if you would, lady gracious, then leave grant me, and release your prisoner, and pray him to rise, I would abandon this bed, and better array me. The more pleasant would it prove than to parley with you." "Nay, forsooth, fair sir," said the sweet lady, "you shall not go from your bed. I will govern you better. Here fast shall I enfold you, on the far side also, and then talk with my true knight that I have taken so. For I wot well indeed that Sir Gawain you are, to whom all men pay homage wherever you ride. Your honour, your courtesy, by the courteous is praised, by lords, by ladies, by all living people. And right here you now are, and we all by ourselves. My husband and his huntsmen far hence have ridden, other men are abed, and my maids also. The door closed and caught with a clasp that is strong, and since I have in this house one that all delight in, my time to account I will turn, while for talk I chance have still. To my body will you welcome be, of delight to take your fill, for need constraineth me to serve you, and I will." "Upon my word," said Gawain, "that is well, I guess, though I am not now he of whom you are speaking. To attain to such honour as here you tell of, I am a knight unworthy, as well indeed I know. By God, I would be glad, if good to you seemed, whatever I could say or in service could offer. To the pleasure of your excellence, it would be pure delight." "In good faith, Sir Gawain," said the gracious lady, "the prowess and excellence that all others approve. If I scorned or decried them, it were scant courtesy. But there are ladies in number who liever would now have thee in their hold, sir, as I have thee here, pleasantly to play with in polished converse, their solace to seek and their sorrows to soothe, than great part of the goods or gold that they own. But I thank him who on high of heaven is Lord, that I have here wholly in my hand what all desire by grace." She was an urgent wooer, that lady fair of face. The knight with speeches pure replied in every case. "Madame," he said merrily, "Mary reward you, for I have enjoyed in good faith your generous favour, and much honoured have had else from others. Kind deeds, but as for the courtesy they accord me, since my claim is not equal, the honour is your own, who are ever well-meaning." "Nay, Mary," the lady demurred, "as for me I deny it. For were I worth all the legion of women alive, and all the wealth in the world at my will possessed, if I should exchange at my choice, and choose me a husband, for the noble nature I know, Sir Knight, in thee here, in beauty and bounty and bearing so gay, of which earlier I have heard, and hold it now true, then no lord alive would I elect before you." "In truth, lady," he returned, "you took one far better. But I am proud of the praise you are pleased to give me, and as your servant in earnest my sovereign I hold you, and your knight I become, and may Christ reward you." Thus of many matters they spoke till mid-morn was past, and ever the lady demeaned her as one that loved him much, and he fenced with her featly, ever flawless in manner. "Though I were lady most lovely," thought the lady to herself, "the less love would he bring me here," since he looked for his bane, that blow, that him so soon should grieve, and needs it must be so. Then the lady asked for leave, and at once he let her go. Then she gave him good day, and with a glance she laughed. And as she stood, she astonished him with the strength of her words. "Now he that prospers all speech for this disport repay you. But that you should be Gawain, it gives me much thought." "Why so?" Then eagerly the knight asked her, afraid that he had failed in the form of his converse. But, "God bless you, for this reason," blithely she answered, "that one so good as Gawain the gracious is held, who all the compass of courtesy includes in his person, so long with the lady could hardly have lingered without craving a kiss, as a courteous knight, but some tactful turn that their talk led to. Then said Gawain, Very well, as you wish be it done. I will kiss at your command, as becometh a knight. And more, lest he displease you, so plead it no longer. She came near thereupon, and caught him in her arms, and down daintily bending dearly she kissed him, then courteously commended each other to Christ. Without more ado, through the door she withdrew and departed. And he to rise up in haste, made ready at once. He calls to his chamberlain, and chooses his clothes, and goes forth when garbed all gladly to mass. Then he went to a meal that meetly awaited him, and made merry all day till the moon arose o'er the earth. Ne'er was knight so gaily engaged between two dames of worth, the youthful and the aged, together they made much mirth. And ever the lord of the land in his delight was abroad, hunting by holt and heath after hinds that were barren. When the sun began to slope, he had slain such a number of does and other deer, one might doubt it were true. Then the fell folk at last came flocking all in, and quickly of the kill they a quarry assembled. Thither the master hastened with a host of his men, gathered together those greatest in fat, and had them riven open rightly, as the rules require. At the assay they were searched by some that were there, and 2 fingers' breadth of fat they found in the leanest. Next they slit the eslot, seized on the arbor, shaved it with a sharp knife, and shore away the grease. Next ripped the forelimbs, and rent off the hide. Then they broke open the belly, the bowels they removed, flinging them nimbly afar, and the flesh of the knot. They grasped then the gorge, disengaging with skill the weasand from the windpipe, and did away with the guts. Then they shore out the shoulder with their sharpened knives, drawing the sinews through a small cut, the sides to keep whole. Next they burst open the breast, and broke it apart, and again at the gorge one begins thereupon, cuts all up quickly till he comes to the fork, and fetches forth the 4 numbles. And following after all the tissues along the ribs they tear away quickly. Thus by the bones of the back they broke off with skill, down even to the haunch, all that hung there together, and hoisted it up, all whole, and hewed it off there, and that they took for the numbles, as I trow is their name in kind. Along the fork of every thigh the flaps they fold behind, to hew it in 2 they hie, down the back all to unbind. Both the head and the neck they hew off thereafter, and next swiftly they sunder the sides from the chine, and the bone for the crow they cast in the bows. Then they thrust through both thick sides with a thong by the rib, and then by the hocks of the leg they hang them both up. All the folk earn the fees that fall to their lot. Upon the fell of the fair beast they fed their hounds, then on the liver and the lights and the leather of the paunches, with bread bathed in blood blended amongst them. Boldly they blew the prize, amid the barking of dogs, and then bearing up their venison, bent their way homeward, striking up strongly many a stout horn-call. When daylight was done, they all duly were come into the noble castle, where quietly the knight abode, in bliss by bright fires set. Thither the lord now strode, then Gawain with him met, then free all pleasures flowed. Then the master commanded his men to meet in the hall, and both dames to come down with their damsels also. Before all the folk on that floor, fair men he ordered, to fetch there forthwith his venisons before him, and all gracious and game to Gawain he called, announced the number by tally of the nimble beasts, and showed him the shining fat all shorn on the ribs.
How does this please you? Have I praise deserved? Have I earned by mine art the heartiest thanks?
Yea, verily, the other averred. Here is venison the fairest that I have seen in 7 years in the season of winter.
And I give it you all, Gawain, said the good man at once. For as our covenant accorded, you may claim it as your own.
That is true, he returned, and I tell you the same. What of worth within these walls I have one also. With as good will I warrant 'tis awarded to you. His fair neck he unfolded, then fast in his arms, and kissed him with all the kindness that his courtesy knew. There take you my gain, sir, I got nothing more. I would give it up gladly, even if greater it were.
That is a good one, quoth the good man. Greatly I thank you. 'Tis such, maybe, that you had better briefly now tell me where you won this same wealth by the wits you possess.
That was not the covenant, quoth he. Do not question me more, for you've drawn what is due to you, no doubt can you have, 'tis true. They laughed, and with voices fair their merriment pursue, and to supper soon repair, with many dainties new. Later, by the chimney in chamber they were seated, abundant wine of the best was brought to them oft, and again as a game they agreed on the morrow, to abide by the same bond as they had bargained before. Chance that might chance, to exchange all their trade, whatever new thing they got. When they gathered at night, they concluded this compact before the courtiers all. The drink for the bargain was brought forth in jest. Then their leave at the last they lovingly took, and away then at once each went to his bed. When the cock had crowed and cackled but thrice, the lord had leapt from his bed, and his lieges each one, so that their meal had been made, and the mass was over. And folk bound for the forest ere the first daybreak, to chase loud with hunters and horns, o'er plains they passed apace, and loosed there among the thorns the running dogs to race. Soon these cried for a quest in a covert by a marsh. The huntsman hailed the hound that first heeded the scent. Stirring words he spoke to him with a strident voice. The hounds then that heard it hastened thither swiftly, and fell fast on the line, some 40 at once. Then such a baying and babble of bloodhounds together arose that the rock wall rang all about them. Hunters enheartened them with horn and with mouth, and then all in a rout rushed on together, between a fen pool in that forest and a frowning crag. In a tangle under a tall cliff at the tarn's edges, where the rough rock ruggedly in ruin was fallen, they fared to the find, followed by hunters, who made a cast round the crag and the clutter of stones, till well they were aware that it waited within, the very beast that the baying bloodhounds had spoken. Then they beat on the bushes, and bade him uprise, and forth he came to their peril against folk in his path. 'Twas a boar without rival that burst out upon them. Long the herd he had left, that lone beast aged, for savage was he, of all swine the hugest, grim indeed when he grunted, then aghast were many, for 3 at the first thrust he threw to the ground, and sprang off with great speed, sparing the others, and they hallooed on high, and ha-ha shouted, and hold horned mouth, blowing hard the rally. Many were the wild mouthings of men and of dogs, as they bounded after this boar, him with blare and with din to quell. Many times he turns to bay, and maims the pack pell-mell. He hurts many hounds, and they grievously yowl and yell. Hunters then hurried up, eager to shoot him, aiming at him their arrows. Often they hit him, but poor at core proved the points that pitched on his shields, and the barbs on the arrows would bite not at all, though the shaven shaft shivered in pieces. Back the head came hopping wherever it hit him, but when the hurts went home of their heavier strokes, then with brain wild for battle he burst out upon them. Ruthless he rent them as he rushed forward, and many quailed at his coming and quickly withdrew. But the lord on a light horse went leaping after him, as bold men on battlefield with his bugle he blew, the rally call as he rode through the rough thickets, pursuing this wild swine till the sunbeams slanted. This day, in such doings thus duly they passed, while our brave knight, beloved, there lies in his bed, at home in good hap, in housing so costly and gay. The lady did not forget, she came to bid good day, early she on him set, his will to wear away. She passed to the curtain and peeped at the knight. Sir Gawain graciously then welcomed her first, and she answered him alike, eagerly speaking, and sat her softly by his side, and suddenly she laughed, and with a look full of love delivered these words: "Sir, if you are Gawain, a wonder I think, that a man so well-meaning, ever mindful of good, yet cannot comprehend the customs of the gentle, and if one acquaints you therewith, you do not keep them in mind. Thou hast forgot altogether what a day ago I taught, by the plainest points I could put into words." "What is that?" he said at once. "I am not aware at all. But if you are telling the truth, I must take all the blame." "And yet as to kisses," she quoth, "this counsel I gave you, wherever favour is found, defer not to claim them. that becomes all who care for courteous manners." "Take back," said the true knight, "that teaching, my dear, for I dared not do, for dread of refusal. Were I rebuffed, I should be to blame for so bold an offer." "Ma fay," said the fair lady, "you may not be refused. You are stout enough to constrain one by strength, if you like, if any were so ill-bred as to answer you nay." "Indeed, by God," quoth Gawain, "you graciously speak. But force finds no favour among the folk where I dwell, and any gift not given gladly and freely. I am at your call and command to kiss when you please. You may receive as you desire, and cease as you think in place." Then down the lady bent, and sweetly kissed his face. Much speech then there they spent of lovers' grief and grace. "I would learn from you, lord," the lady then said, "if you would not mind my asking, what is the meaning of this, that one so young as are you in years, and so gay, by renown so well known for knighthood and breeding, while of all chivalry the choice, the chief thing to praise, is the loyal practice of love, very lore of knighthood, for, talking of the toils that these true knights suffer, it is the title and contents and text of their works, how lovers for their true love their lives have imperilled, have endured for their dear one dolorous trials, until avenged by their valour their adversity past, they have brought bliss into her bower by their own brave virtues. And you are the knight of most noble renown in our age, and your fame and fair name afar is published. And I have sat by your very self now for the second time, yet your mouth has never made any remark, I have heard, that ever belonged to love-making, lesser or greater. Surely, you that are so accomplished and so courtly in your vows, should be prompt to expound to a young pupil, by signs and examples, the science of lovers. Why? Are you ignorant who all honour enjoy? Or else you esteem me too stupid to understand your courtship. But nay, here single I come and sit, a pupil for your play. Come, teach me of your wit, while my lord is far away." "In good faith," said Gawain, "may God reward you. Great delight I gain, and am glad beyond measure, that one so worthy as you should be willing to come here and take pains with so poor a man. As for playing with your knight, showing favour in any form, it fills me with joy. But for me to take up the task on true love to lecture, to comment on the text and tales of knighthood to you, who, I am certain, possess far more skill in that art, by the half than 100 of such as I am, or shall ever be while on earth I remain, it would be folly manifold, in faith, my lady. All your will I would wish to work as I am able, being so beholden in honour, and, so help me the Lord, desiring ever the servant of yourself to remain." Thus she tested and tried him, tempting him often, so as to allure him to love-making, whatever lay in her heart. But his defence was so fair that no fault could be seen, nor any evil upon either side, nor aught but joy. They wist. They laughed, and long they played. At last she him then kissed, with grace adieu him bade, and went whereso she list. Then rousing from his rest, he rose to hear mass, and then their dinner was laid and daintily served. The livelong day with the ladies in delight he spent, but the lord o'er the lands leaped to and fro, pursuing his fell swine that o'er the slopes hurtled, and bit asunder the backs of the best of his hounds. Wherever to bay he was brought, until bowmen dislodged him, and made him maugre his teeth, move again onward. So fast the shafts flew when the folk were assembled, and yet the stoutest of them still he made start there aside, till at last he was so spent he could speed no further, but in such haste as he might he made for a hollow, on a reef beside a rock where the river was flowing. He put the bank to his back, began then to paw. Fearfully the froth of his mouth foamed from the corners. He whetted his white tusks, then weary were all the brave men so bold as by him to stand, of plaguing him from afar, yet for peril they dared not come nigher. He had hurt so many before, that none had now desire to be torn with the tusks once more of the beast, both mad and dire. Till the knight himself came, his courser spurring, and saw him brought there to bay, and all about him his men. Nothing loth, he alighted, and leaving his horse, brandished his bright blade, and boldly advanced, striding stoutly through the ford to where stood the felon. The wild beast was aware of him, with his weapon in hand, and high raised his hair, with such hate he snorted, that folk feared for the night, lest his foe should worst him. Out came the swine and set on him at once, and the boar and the brave men were both in a melee. In the wildest of the water, the worse had the beast, for the man marked him well, and as they met he at once struck steadily his point straight in the neck slot, and hit him up to the hilts, so that his heart was riven. And with a snarl he succumbed, and was swept down the water straightway. 100 hounds him caught, and fiercely bit their prey. The men to the bank him brought, and dogs him dead did lay. There men blew for the praise in many a blaring horn, and high and loud hallooed all the hunters that could. Bloodhounds bayed for the beast, as bayed the masters, who of that hard-run chase were the chief huntsmen. Then one that was well learned in woodman's lore, with pretty cunning began to carve up this boar. First he hewed off his head, and on high set it. Then he rent him roughly down the ridge of his back, brought out the bowels, burned them on gleeds, and with them, blended with blood, the bloodhounds rewarded. Next he broke up the boar flesh with broad slabs of brawn, and haled forth the hastlets in order all duly, and yet all whole he fastened the halves together, and strongly on a stout pole he strung them then up. Now with this swine homeward swiftly they hastened, and the boar's head was borne before the brave knight himself, who felled him in the ford by force of his hand so great, until he saw Gawain in the hall he could hardly wait. He called, and his pay to gain, the other came there straight. The lord with his loud voice and laughter merry, gaily he greeted him, when Gawain he saw. The fair ladies were fetched, and the folk all assembled, and he showed them the shorn slabs, and shaped his report of the width and wondrous length, and the wickedness also in war, of the wild swine, as in the woods he had fled. With fair words his friends the feat then applauded, and praised the great prowess he had proved in his deeds, for such brawn on a beast, the brave knight declared, or such sides on a swine he had never seen before. They then handled the huge head, and highly he praised it, showing horror at the hideous thing to honor the Lord.
Now, Gawain, said the good man, this game is your own, by close covenant we concluded, as clearly you know.
That is true, he returned, and as truly, I assure you, all my winnings, I warrant, I shall award you in exchange. He clasped his neck, and courteously a kiss he then gave him, and swiftly with a second he served him on the spot. Now we are quits, he quoth, and clear for this evening of all covenants we accorded, since I came to this house as is due. The Lord said,
By Saint Giles, your match I never knew. You'll be wealthy in a while, such trade if you pursue.
Then on top of the trestles the table they laid, cast the cloths thereon, and clear light then wakened along the walls. Wax and torches men set there, and servants went swift about the hall. Much gladness and gaiety began then to spring round the fire on the hearth, and freely and oft, at supper and later, many songs of delight, such as canticles of Christmas and new carol dances, amid all the mannerly mirth that men can tell of. And ever our noble knight was next to the lady. Such glances she gave him of her gracious favor, secretly stealing sweet looks that strong man to charm, that he was passing perplexed and ill-pleased at heart. Yet he would fain not of his courtesy coldly refuse her, but graciously engaged her, however against the grain the play. When mirth they had made in hall, as long as they wished to stay, to a room did the Lord them call, and to the ingle they made their way. There, amid merry words and wine, they had a mind once more to harp on the same note on New Year's Eve. But said Gawain, Grant me leave to go on the morrow, for the appointment approaches that I pledged myself to. The Lord was loth to allow it, and longer would keep him, and said,
As I am a true man, I swear on my troth, the Green Chapel shalt thou gain, and go to your business in the dawn of New Year, sir, ere daytime begins. So still lie upstairs and stay at thine ease, and I shall hunt in the holt here, and hold to my terms with thee truly, when I return to trade all our gains. For I have tested thee twice, and trusty I find thee. Now, third time pays for all. Bethink thee tomorrow. Make merry while we may, and be mindful of joy, for the woe one may win whenever one wishes.
This was graciously agreed, and Gawain would linger. Then gaily drink is given them, and they go to their beds with light. Sir Gawain lies and sleeps soft and sound all night, his host to his hunting keeps, and his early arrayed aright. After mass, of a morsel he and his men partook. Merry was the morning, for his mount then he called. All the huntsmen that on horse behind him should follow were ready mounted to ride arrayed at the gates. Wondrous fair were the fields, for the frost clung there, and red rose-hued o'er the wrack arises the sun, sailing clear along the coasts of the cloudy heavens. The hunters loosed hounds by a holt border. The rocks rang in the wood, and the roar of their horns. Some fell on the line to where the fox was lying, crossing and recrossing it in the cunning of their craft. A hound then gives tongue, the huntsman names him. Round him press his companions in a pack all snuffling, running forth in a rabble, then right in his path. The fox flits before them. They find him at once, and when they see him by sight they pursue him hotly, decrying him full clearly with a clamor of wrath. He dodges and ever doubles through many a dense coppice, and looping of the lurks, and listens under fences. At last, at a little ditch, he leaps o'er the thorn hedge, sneaks out secretly by the side of a thicket, weens he is out of the wood, and away by his wiles from the hounds. Thus he went unawares to a watch that was posted, where fierce on him fell 3 foes at once, all grey. He swerves in swiftly again, and dauntless darts astray. In grief and in great pain, to the woods he turns away. Then to hark to the hounds it was heart's delight, when all the pack came upon him, there pressing together, such a curse as the view they called down on him, that the clustering cliffs might have clattered in ruin. Here he was hallooed when hunters came on him. Yonder was he assailed with snarling tongues, there he was threatened, and oft thief was he called. With ever the trailers at his tail, so to tarry he could not. Oft was he run at, if he rushed outwards. Oft he swerved in again, so subtle was Reynard. Yea, he led the lord and his hunt as laggards behind him, thus by mount and by hill till mid-afternoon. Meanwhile the courteous knight in the castle in comfort slumbered, behind the comely curtains in the cold morning. But the lady in love-making had no liking to sleep, nor to disappoint the purpose she had planned in her heart. But rising up swiftly, his room now she sought, in a gay mantle that to the ground was measured, and was fur-lined most fairly, with fells well trimmed, with no comely coif on her head, only the clear jewels that were twined in her treasure by 20s in clusters. Her noble face and her neck all naked were laid, her breast bare in front, and at the back also. She came through the chamber door, and closed it behind her. Wide set a window, and to wake him she called, thus greeting him gaily with her gracious words of cheer. Ah, man, how canst thou sleep? The morning is so clear. He lay in darkness deep, but her call he then could hear. In heavy darkness, drowsing, he dream words muttered, as a man whose mind was bemused with many mournful thoughts. How destiny should his doom on that day bring him, when he at the green chapel the great man would meet, and be obliged his blow to abide without debate at all. But when so comely she came, he recalled then his wits, swept aside his slumbers, and swiftly made answer, down o'er his dear face, and deftly kissed him. He greeted her graciously with a glad welcome, seeing her so glorious and gaily attired, so faultless in her features, and so fine in her hues, that at once joy upwelling went warm to his heart. With smiles sweet and soft they turned swiftly to mirth, and only brightness and bliss was broached there between them so gay. They spoke then speeches good, much pleasure was in that play, great peril between them stood, unless Mary for her knight should pray. For she queenly and peerless pressed him so closely, led him so near the line, that at last he must needs either refuse her with offence, or her favours there take. He cared for his courtesy, lest a caitiff he proved, yet more for his sad case if he should sin commit, and to the owner of the house, to his host, be a traitor. God help me, said he, happen that shall not. Smiling sweetly aside from himself, then he turned, all the fond words of favour that fell from her lips. Said she to the knight then, Now shame you deserve, if you love not one that lies alone here beside you, who beyond all women in the world is wounded in heart, unless you have a leman, more beloved, whom you like better, and have affianced faith to that fair one so fast and so true, that your release you desire not, and so I believe now. And to tell me, if that be so truly, I beg you, for all sakes that men swear by, conceal not the truth in guile. The knight said, By St. John, and softly gave a smile, Nay, lover have I none, and none will have meanwhile. Those words, said the woman, are the worst that could be, but I am answered indeed, and 'tis hard to endure. Kiss me now kindly, and I will quickly depart. I may mourn while I live as one that much is in love. Sighing, she sank down, and sweetly she kissed him. Then soon she left his side, and said as she stood there, Now, my dear, at this parting do me this pleasure. Give me something as thy gift, thy glove it might be, that I may remember me, dear man, my mourning to lessen. No, on my word, said he, I wish I had here the loveliest thing for thy delight, that in my land I possess. For worthily have you earned wondrously often, more reward by rights than within my reach would now be, save to allot you as love-token thing of little value. Beneath your honour it is to have here and now a glove for the guerdon as a gift of Sir Gawain. And I am here on an errand in unknown lands, and have no bearers with baggage and beautiful things. Unlucky, dear lady, for your delight at this time. A man must do as he is placed, be not pained nor aggrieved, said he. Said she so comely clad, Nay, noble knight and free, though naught of yours I had, you should get a gift from me. A rich ring she offered him of red gold fashioned, with a stone like a star standing up clear, that bore brilliant beams as bright as the sun. I warrant you that it was worth wealth beyond measure. But the knight said nay to it, and announced then at once, I will have no gifts, for God, of your grace at this time. I have none to return you, and naught will I take. She proffered it, and pressed him, and he her pleading refused, and swore swiftly upon his word, that accept it he would not. And she, sorry that he refused, said to him further, If to my ring you say nay, since too rich it appears, and you would not so deeply be indebted to me, I shall give you my girdle, less gain will that be. She unbound a belt swiftly that embracing her sides was clasped above her kirtle under her comely mantle. Fashioned it was of green silk and with gold finished, though only braided round about, embroidered by hand. She unbound a belt swiftly that embracing her sides was clasped above her kirtle under a comely mantle. Fashioned it was of green silk and with gold finished, though only braided round about, embroidered by hand. And this she would give to Gawain, and gladly besought him, of no worth though it were, to be willing to take it. And he said nay, he would not, he would never receive either gold or jewellery, ere God the grace sent him, to accomplish the quest on which he had come thither. Do you refuse now the silk, said the fair lady, because in itself it is poor, and so it appears? See how small 'tis in size, and smaller in value. But one who knew of the nature that is knit there within would appraise it probably at a price far higher, for whoever goes girdled with this green riband, while he keeps it clasped closely about him, there is none so hardy under heaven that to hew him were able, for he could not be killed by any cunning of hand. The knight then took note, and thought now in his heart 'twould be a prize in that peril that was appointed to him. When he gained the green chapel, to get there his sentence, if by some slight he were not slain, 'twould be a sovereign device. Then he bore with her rebuke, and bated not her words, and she pressed on him the belt, and proffered it in earnest. And he agreed, and she gave it very gladly indeed, and prayed him for her sake to part with it never, but on his honour hide it from her husband. And he then agreed, that no one ever should know, nay, none in the world but they. With earnest heart and mood, great thanks he oft did say. She then the knight so good, a third time kissed that day. Then she left him alone, her leave taking, for amusement from the man no more could she get. When she was gone, Sir Gawain got him soon ready, arose, and robed himself in raiment noble. He laid up the lovelace that the lady had given, hiding it heedfully where he after might find it. Then first of all he chose to fare to the chapel, privately approached a priest, and prayed that he there would uplift his life, that he might learn better how his soul should be saved when he was sent from the world. There he cleanly confessed him, and declared his misdeeds, both the more and the less, and for mercy he begged. To absolve him of them all he besought the good man. And he assoiled him, and made him as safe and as clean as for doomsday indeed, were it due on the morrow. Thereafter more merry he made among the fair ladies, with carol dances gentle, and all kinds of rejoicing, than ever he did ere that day, till the darkness of night and bliss. Each man there said, I vow, a delight to all he is. Since hither he came till now, he was ne'er so gay as this. Now indoors let him dwell, and have dearest delight, while the free lord yet fares afield in his sports. At last the fox he has felled, that he followed so long, for, as he spurred through a spinney to espy there the villain, where the hounds he had heard that hard on him pressed, Reynard on his road came through a rough thicket, and all the rabble in a rush were right on his heels. The man is aware of the wild thing, and watchful awaits him, brings out his bright band, and at the beast hurls it, and he blenched at the blade, and would have backed if he could. A hound hastened up, and had him ere he could, and right before the horse's feet they fell on him all, and worried there the wily one with a wild clamour. The lord quickly alights, and lifts him at once, snatching him swiftly from their slavering mouths, holds him high o'er his head, hallooing loudly, and there bay at him fiercely many furious hounds. Huntsmen hurried thither with horns full many, ever sounding the assembly till they saw the master, when together had come his company noble, all that ever bore bugle were blowing at once, and all the others hallooed that had not a horn. It was the merriest music that ever men hearkened. The resounding song there raised that for Reynard's soul awoke. To hounds they pay their fees, their heads they fondly stroke, and Reynard then they seize, and off they skin his cloak. And then homeward they hastened, for at hand was now night, making strong music on their mighty horns. The lord alighted at last at his beloved abode, found a fire in the hall, and fair by the hearth. Sir Gawain the good, and gay was he too, among the ladies, and delight his lot was most joyful. He was clad in a blue cloak that came to the ground. His surcoat well beseemed him, with all its soft lining, and its hood of like hue that hung on his shoulder. All fringed with white fur, very finely were both. He met indeed the master in the midst of the floor, and in gaiety greeted him, and graciously said, In this case I will first our covenant fulfill, that to our good we agreed when ungrudged went the drink. He clasped then the knight, and kisses him thrice, as long and deliciously as he could lay them upon him.
By Christ, the other quote, you've come by a fortune in winning such wares. Were they worth what you paid?
Indeed, the price was not important, promptly he answered, whereas plainly is paid now the profit I gained.
Marry, said the other man, mine is not up to't. For I have hunted all this day, and naught else have I got but this foul fox-fell. The fiend have the goods, and that is price very poor to pay for such treasures as these you have thrust upon me. 3 such kisses so good.
'Tis enough, then, said Sir Gawain. I thank you, by the rood. And how the fox was slain, he told him as they stood. With mirth and minstrelsy and meat at their pleasure, as merry they made as many men could be. Amid the laughter of ladies and light words of jest, both Gawain and the good man could no gayer have proved, unless they had doted indeed, or else drunken had been. Both the host and his household went on with their games, till the hour had approached, when part must they all. To bed were now bound the brave folk at last. Bowing low his leave of the lord there first, the good knight then took, and graciously thanked him, for such a wondrous welcome as within these walls I have had. For your honour at this high feast the high king reward you. In your service I set myself, your servant, if you will. For I must needs make a move tomorrow, as you know, if you give me some good man to go, as you promised, and guide me to the Green Chapel, as God may permit me to face on New Year's Day such doom as befall me.
On my word, said the host, with hearty good will, to all that ever I promised I promptly shall hold.
Then a servant he assigns him to set him on the road, and by the downs to conduct him, that without doubt or delay he might through wild and through wood ways most straight pursue. Said Gawain, "My thanks receive, such a favour you will do." The knight then took his leave of those noble ladies too. Sadly he kissed them and said his farewells, and pressed oft upon them in plenty his thanks, and they promptly the same again repaid him. To God's keeping they gave him, grievously sighing. Then from the people of the castle he with courtesy parted. All the men that he met he remembered with thanks, for their care for his comfort, and their kind service, and the trouble each had taken in attendance upon him. And every one was as woeful to wish him adieu, as had they lived all their lives with his lordship in honour. Then with linkmen and lights he was led to his chamber, and brought sweetly to bed, there to be at his rest. That soundly he slept, then assert will I not, for he had many matters in the morning to mind, if he would and thought. There let him lie in peace. Near now is the tryst he sought. If a while you will hold your peace, I will tell the deeds they wrought. We have come to the end of part 3 of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and next week I will have the final part of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. We will see you guys again soon. Stay warm.